Well, it is day 3 of the Oscar Pistorius murder trial, and with the pace set on Monday, Tuesday was no less dramatic. Now, we saw 3 witnesses in total on the stand so far, all claiming to have heard screams and gunshots on the morning of February the 14th. Now, with us on the line, just outside the North Gauteng High Court, is Shain Germaner, a journalist of The Star, to give us a summary of the day's proceedings. Thank you very much, Shain, for taking our call once again. Let's get straight into it. Yesterday, defense advocate Barry Roux started the day with his continuation of the cross-examination of Michelle Berger, and he kind of attempted to break her testimony down. What were the highlights of some of that cross-examination as you saw it?
Well, Kabeko, I think the main issue that I saw that Barry Roux seemed to have with Michelle Berger's testimony was that her and her husband's statements were incredibly similar.
Yeah.
He basically accused them of colluding with the investigating officer to create 2 statements that came from a template, essentially, basically giving the same version of events. He also continued to try to say that the bangs that Michelle Berger heard that night could have been the sound of Pistorius trying to break down the bathroom door with a cricket bat. And he also basically suggested that ultimately she was totally unwilling to reconsider that her testimony was wrong, and that she was essentially too bullheaded to consider that his version of events could be correct.
Yeah, and I mean, after a day and a half of being on the stand, she finally broke down. What did you make of her emotions as you saw her there?
Well, it didn't happen during the defense's cross-examination. She only started crying when there was a bit of gentle prodding from the prosecution. A lot of people had several theories on this. I mean, it could have been relief that the cross-examination was over. It could have been the fact that she was asked about her emotions on that night and how she'd been coping since. But ultimately, watching this confident, quite well-spoken woman break down in tears was very emotional. Yeah. But it wasn't just her. Pistorius himself, during Michelle Berger's cross-examination, they had to bring in an expert's testimony on the ballistics, and essentially they revealed to the court once again the extent of damage that Reeva Steenkamp took from those bullets. And it was during this point when Pistorius covered his head, he crouched down in the dark, and when he finally emerged again, his face was beet red, and it looked as though he'd been crying. So I'd say it was quite an emotional morning in court.
And then the second witness came on, Estelle van der Merwe, another one of Oscar's neighbors, who claimed that she had heard shouting, loud shouting, and arguing an hour or so before the shooting. Take us through the testimony and some of the highlights as you saw it.
Well, she did say that she and her husband had been awakened at around 1 a.m. where they'd heard shouts, and it seemed as though it was just a woman's voice that she could hear. There was a sort of stopping and starting of this loud, upset-sounding voice. After that, she tried to go back to sleep, but it was only a few hours later that she heard these 4 loud noises, which she eventually revealed were probably the gunshots. Yeah. Now, it was after that there was total silence until she heard a very loud crying. Now, she was convinced it was the sound of a woman, but her husband told her that he was sure it had to have been Oscar that they heard. So once again, it seems as though this line of thought from the defense that possibly in Pistorius' aggravation and sheer distraught nature of the evening, that his voice pitch must have raised, and that it could have been him actually shouting and screaming rather than a woman.
Yeah. Shain, I'm going to ask you to hold on, because also joining us here in studio is Mr. William Booth, the chairperson of the Law Society's Criminal Law Committee. Thank you very much for coming in this morning. What do you make of the past 2 days? A lot of people on social media have been commenting and saying that Barry Roux is really brutal. He's really going out there and trying to tear these testimonies apart. What is Barry Roux trying to do right now?
Well, look, I think one must look at cross-examination and how far you can actually go as a lawyer. Yeah. Aggressive cross-examination is one thing, but as you say, brutal or unfair cross-examination shouldn't be allowed in court. Yeah. And a judge has the duty to, in fact, intervene from time to time if she finds that the cross-examination is going too far and the witness is being badgered.
Yes.
I think what the defense is trying to do here is to establish that it was Oscar that was shouting.
Yes.
His defense is that he thought there was an intruder in his house, and as such, that's how it all happened. So, that it wasn't a female shouting, but that it was a male shouting throughout, shouting for help because of the fact that he felt that he was at risk.
Yeah. And Shain, just quickly before you go, I mean, Shaun Johnson is due to continue his stint on the stand this morning. Of course, Shaun Johnson, who's the wife, or the husband rather, of Michelle Berger. What did you make of his testimony in relation to that first day where we saw Barry Rue really going at Michelle Berger and trying to find the link between the the testimonies?
Well, it does seem as though both statements are very similar, although Shaw has gone into a lot more detail. He's mentioned how he actually climbed on his roof and used the Google Earth to determine the distance between his house and Pistorius's, and how he also had only heard the following day that the incident that they'd heard that night was, in fact, the shooting of Reva Steenkamp. Yeah. So it should be interesting today to see whether or not Barry Rue is as intense as he was with Michelle Berger.
Mm-hmm. And what can we expect today, Shain?
Going to be the continuing, should be the cross-examination of Shaun Johnson, but beyond that, I'm not sure how long that could take. I mean, Barry took a very long time with Michelle. He could do the same thing with her husband, but it could also go the other way, where he just asks a few questions like he did with Self and Minerva. But I have a sneaking suspicion he's probably going to put Shaun Johnson through the ringer.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Shain. Thank you very much for your time. William, to continue with you, what do you make of the case so far? Who do you think has the upper hand, the state or the defense?
Well, I think Michelle Berger fared pretty well. You know, it's grueling cross-examination over a period of 2 days.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's a traumatic experience for anybody to go to court and testify. I think more so when the world is watching. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think she came through quite well. She pretty stuck to her story that she started out with.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we mustn't forget that it is an emotional experience. And even if you are there telling the truth, you find it very difficult when everybody is asking you all these different questions, mm-hmm. and some of the questions might sound insignificant, but at the end of the day, you know, the defense is trying to establish a particular angle,
yes.
and trying to, as you said, break her down. So, you know, if you can get annoyed, and then she broke down at one stage, there was some emotion, and I think that is kind of expected.
It's expected, yeah. Well, Mr. Booth, thank you very much for your time. We look forward to having you back and hearing more of your insights regarding the case. And also thank you very much to our reporter on location at the North Gauteng High Court, star journalist Shain Germaner. We'll be bringing you more on the updates of day 3 of the Oscar Pistorius murder trial tomorrow. Stay tuned for more on your Feel Good Breakfast show.